Why do the people who seem the most fine always turn out to be the least fine? Why do they laugh the loudest in a room full of people and cry alone where no one can see? Why do they carry everything and ask for nothing? And why, no matter how heavy it gets, do they always say the same two words? I'm fine. Stay. Because what's happening inside that answer will change how you see everyone around you, including yourself. Most people don't decide to become someone who hides how they feel. It happens gradually, and it almost always begins in the same place. At some point, usually early in life, they learned that their emotions were too much, too dramatic, too sensitive, too inconvenient for the people around them. So they adjusted. They learned to shrink what they felt, to package it into something smaller, something more acceptable, something that didn't make others uncomfortable. And every time they did, it worked. People stayed calm. Situations didn't escalate. Nobody left, so they did it again and again until it stopped feeling like a choice and started feeling like just the way they were. Here's what most people don't realize about pretending. In the beginning, it's a tool, a strategy, a way of managing a situation that feels unmanageable. But over time, the mask stops being something you put on. It becomes the first thing people see, and eventually the first thing you see too. You stop asking yourself how you actually feel, because the question takes too long to answer. It's easier to say fine. It's easier to move on. It's easier to focus on everyone else's problems because those feel solvable in a way that yours don't. People who pretend everything is fine are often the most perceptive people in the room. They notice when someone else is struggling before that person says a word, because they have spent years learning how to read what's underneath what people say on the surface. They just never applied that skill to themselves. Pretending has a price, not one that shows up immediately, but one that accumulates slowly, quietly, in the background. It costs energy, real energy. Maintaining a version of yourself that doesn't match what's happening inside is exhausting in a way that sleep doesn't fix. You wake up tired, not because you didn't rest, but because even in rest, part of you is still performing. It costs connection too, because when you only ever show people the fine version of you, you never find out if they could handle the real one. You protect yourself from rejection, but you also protect yourself from being truly known. And somewhere underneath all of it, the loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people who only know the version of you that's holding it together. That loneliness is one of the quietest and heaviest things a person can carry. The obvious question is, why not just stop? Why not just say what's actually happening? But for someone who has spent years learning that their emotions are too much, saying I'm not fine feels like more than honesty. It feels like a risk. What if they can't handle it? What if they leave? What if saying it out loud makes it more real than it already is? So the pretending continues, not because they don't want to be honest, but because somewhere along the way they learned that the world was safer when they made it easy for everyone else. The psychology of people who pretend everything is fine is not about deception. It was never about lying to others. It was about survival, about learning, in a world that didn't always make space for their pain, that the safest thing to do was to take up less room. But here's what pretending costs in the long run. Every time you say you're fine when you're not, you tell yourself just a little bit that what you're actually feeling doesn't deserve to be heard. And over time, you start to believe it. The people who pretend everything is fine don't need to be told to open up. They need to experience even once what it feels like to say the truth and not have the world fall apart because of it. That moment when someone sees what's underneath and stays anyway is the moment the pretending starts to lose its grip. Most people will finish this video and keep scrolling. But if something in here stayed with you, even for a moment, that's not an accident. That's you, starting to understand yourself a little better. Subscribe to Echo Behavior. Every week, one more piece of the puzzle. And drop a comment below. Tell me which part hit closest to home. I read every single one.